A so-called fixed scaffold is basically a temporary elevated steel framework that's assembled on a job site and used to support personnel and materials for construction and maintenance work. A number of different types of fixed scaffolds are available. One type is a tubular welded frame or tubular buck scaffold. It consists basically of prefabricated end sections that are connected with diagonal cross braces. Another type is a tube and clamp scaffold. It consists of individual vertical posts, horizontal members, and diagonal braces that are fastened together with clamps. Still another type is a locking ring or systems scaffold. It consists of individual components that are fastened together using locking rings and end connectors. Scaffolds are classified by the weight that they're designed to support. The design capacity of a scaffold is based on the total weight of all loads, including the weight of the working load as well as the weight of the scaffold. Three basic scaffold classifications are heavy duty, which is designed to carry a maximum load of 75 pounds per square foot; medium duty, which is designed to carry a maximum load of 50 pounds per square foot; and light duty, which is designed to carry a maximum load of 25 pounds per square foot. Scaffolds are designed and built according to strict safety standards. In fact, on many sites, scaffold builders are required to be certified according to company policies and procedures. But there are inherent dangers associated with working above ground level, and scaffold components can weaken or become damaged over time. Because of these concerns, some basic safety guidelines should be followed when any type of scaffolding is used. A systems scaffold is a common type of scaffold that can be assembled on a job site to form a rectangular framework capable of supporting personnel and materials. Basically, a systems scaffold consists of individual poles or legs that serve as vertical posts, horizontal members that connect between the vertical posts, and diagonal braces that connect the vertical posts and horizontal members to strengthen the scaffold. Many of the other components are the same as those for other types of scaffolding. While the exact procedures involved in erecting a systems scaffold can vary slightly, most of the basic steps are the same. The procedure we'll watch is typical, but you should always follow the guidelines established by the scaffold manufacturer or by your company. Before any scaffold is erected, there are some basic preliminary steps that should be done. One of the first steps is to carefully examine the work area for hazards in order to determine where to place the scaffold. You should also estimate how high the scaffold needs to be built, so you can determine how many components will be needed. Another preliminary step is to carefully inspect all scaffold components before they're used. Components that are excessively dirty or damaged may have to be cleaned or discarded. Let's watch these scaffold builders erect a system scaffold using the components they've gathered. They start by placing wooden boards called sills on the ground where the scaffold legs will be located, and then placing a base plate with a screw jack on top of each sill. Next, short vertical posts called starter collars are placed on top of the screw jacks. The builders have added a connector called a coupling pin to the top of each starter collar so that other vertical posts can be added later. Then, the first of the horizontal members are connected between the starter collars. The horizontal members are secured to the starter collars by driving in wedge pins on the end connectors. This locks the end connectors of the horizontal members onto the locking rings of the starter collar. If the scaffold isn't level, the builders adjust the screw jacks as needed to make it level. They check each horizontal member this way until the lower framework of the scaffold is level. Then they nail down the base plates of the screw jacks to the sills to secure them. With the lower framework in place, the builders next install vertical legs over the coupling pins in top of the starter collars. The coupling pins have spring-loaded pins that lock the vertical legs and the starter collars together. In the next step, the builders install horizontal members to connect the vertical legs. These members are secured, just like the lower members were earlier, by driving in a wedge to lock an end connector over the locking rings on the vertical leg. Once the horizontal members are in place, ladder sections are added and secured to one of the vertical legs so that the workers can gain access to the upper part of the scaffold. A tag on the ladder bracket warns people that the scaffold is unsafe for use at the present time. A few scaffold planks are placed across the upper horizontal members at this point to give the builders a place to stand so that they can safely continue erecting the scaffold. Then a horizontal member is added between two upper vertical legs to provide a place for the builders to attach their fall protection equipment. The next step is to position diagonal braces to support the vertical legs and strengthen the scaffold. The vertical legs are plumbed by using a bubble level and sliding the connector of the diagonal brace up or down the vertical leg as needed. Continuing with the assembly, the builders add the remaining vertical legs to the scaffold. Then they install the horizontal members that will serve as the supports for the scaffold floor. After the final section of ladder is attached, planks are added to form the scaffold floor. Once the floor is in place, 2x4 toe boards are attached on all four sides of the scaffold. Then horizontal members are attached to the vertical legs above the scaffold floor to serve as guardrails. One member acts as an upper guardrail, and the other one acts as a middle guardrail. Keep in mind that if people are going to be working or passing underneath the scaffold, a screen would need to be installed between the toe board and the middle guardrail. To complete the erection procedure, the builders use wire to secure the scaffold floor and toe boards to the framework. The crew chief then attaches a green tag to the scaffold to indicate that the scaffold is ready for use. After a scaffold has been assembled and inspected, it can be put to use. But it's important for workers to continue to inspect scaffolds while they're in use to make sure that they remain in good condition. It's also important to follow some basic safety guidelines when you use a scaffold. For example, always use both hands when you're climbing a scaffold ladder, and be careful when you're entering or leaving the work platform. Don't jump onto the scaffold flooring, since there's always the possibility that a plank could be loose or break. Also, avoid overloading a scaffold. Always follow the manufacturer's recommendations about safe working load limits. Finally, never use ladders or makeshift devices on top of a scaffold to increase the height of the work platform. If you need more height, add on to the scaffold. The disassembly of a system scaffold is basically the reverse of the assembly procedure. First, the scaffold tag is changed to indicate that the scaffold is unsafe for workers. Then the toe boards are removed from all four sides of the scaffold, followed by the upper and middle guardrails, which are removed by prying open the wedges that were driven in during the assembly. The scaffold flooring is removed next. Then the horizontal members that served as the floor supports are removed, along with the upper vertical legs. Next, the diagonal braces are removed from the vertical legs, and the ladder is taken off. The horizontal members that were connected to the midpoint of the first set of vertical legs are then taken down, and the vertical legs are lifted off of the starter collars. Once the lower horizontal members are removed, the starter collars are lifted off of the screw jacks. The screw jacks and base plates, along with the wooden sills, can then be removed to complete the disassembly. A tubular welded frame scaffold, which is sometimes called a tubular buck scaffold, is one type of scaffold that can be used to support personnel and materials. Basically, a tubular welded frame scaffold consists of prefabricated vertical end frames, or bucks, and diagonal cross braces that fasten between the frames. Horizontal members are attached between the upper end frames to serve as guardrails. Access to the top of the scaffold is provided by a ladder that's built into the vertical end frames or attached to them. Most of the remaining components are similar to those found on other types of fixed scaffolding. Many of the steps involved in erecting a tubular welded frame scaffold are similar to those used for other types of fixed scaffolds.